Sorry, brother. Well, I did not fully realize or understood how the act works, who maintains the list, and how is actually how this list works. How are you not disclosing neither yourself or who else is in this list, and how do you verify that you're part of this list?
Right. So how does the act work? So in last year's conference, I gave actually a fairly detailed technical overview. So if you can watch the video from my last year's presentation, you will have a very detailed overview of how ACT works, because that's when we presented how it will be implemented, and now it's been implemented pretty much along those lines. But the short answer is that the publisher of the content is the one who maintains the ACT. So the ACT is basically it's a file. It looks like a file on Swarm. And it's the publisher who maintains it. Or you can use other acts. So acts are reusable, as I mentioned. And the way they work is that they are an encrypted key value database where the key is a Diffie-Hellman shared secret between the grantee, so the person of with the read access who knows the corresponding private key, and the publisher. Which means that you know your own key in that key value database, but you don't know anybody else's key because they're Diffie-Hellman shared secrets. So this way, you calculate the Diffie-Hellman shared secret, and then you look it up in this key value database, and if you find it, then of course you have read access. If you don't, then you don't, but you cannot check up on anybody else.
Thank you.
There's a question here. Or there.
Thanks. So my question is about the scalability of the DHT. What's the limitation of that? And is Swarm going to have some plan after that limitation is reached?
The limit, so which one?
The DHT.
The DHT. So, so the DHT that we're using is a derivative of, or a variant of Kademlia. And so in a Kademlia network, each node has a logarithm. So if the size of the network is n, so we have n nodes in the network, then each node has a logarithm n connections, which is usually manageable. So even if n is really large, the number of connections that you need to maintain is manageable. So that's not a scalability bottleneck. The diameter of the network, which means that the longest path along which data needs to be passed around, is also logarithmic, which is a little bit of a problem, because if the network grows really large, it will mean that these shortest paths will be logarithmic in the network of size, which in terms of latency can be a problem across the network. And the way Swarm deals with it is by caching. So actually caching is both implemented and incentivized. So if you are a Swarm node, you actually gain from caching whatever passes through you. And if there's some popular content, it gets cached around the network, so you don't actually need to go all the way down to the node that is closest to it, because you will find it closer to yourself. So caching is a big way in which we are trying to overcome the inherent limitations in the network, in the Kademlia structure that we have. And another limitation, so another scalability limitation of Kademlia is the fact that in the classic Kademlia, you will need to constantly establish connections which are expensive. So it's implemented over UDP, and it needs to go through all these NAT firewall penetration things and so on. But that's the part where we change things a little bit. So we use more persistent TCP-based connections, meaning that once you establish a connection, you reuse it, and because of that, actually, that part of scalability is not so much of a problem. It brings up a whole host of other challenges, and it's been the number one source of instability that you have seen in the testnet so far, but we are making good progress on that as well. Hope
Thanks.
that answers your question.
So did I get it right that the ACTs are a separate second Merkle trees in the system for access management? First?
So ACTs are manifests. So they are so it's the same data structure that we use for resolving paths into references. So it's a Merkleized data structure. It's the same data structure as we use in the manifests, and it's not the same data structure that we use for chunks. So it's one of the two data structures that we use across Swarm.
I'm particularly interested is whether if you give me access in your ACT for a chunk of data, does that mean that you have to leak a logarithmic number of other of your peers who has access to that data? Because I have to reconstruct the root of the ACT, so you need a logarithmic number of other peers to me.
No, that's not the case, because so the ACT is a key value database where the keys are Diffie-Hellman shared secrets. So even though you do leak some data about those shared secrets, but those are Diffie-Hellman shared secrets, so as long as the decisional Diffie-Hellman assumption holds up, you can't do anything useful with that data. It doesn't tell you anything about who has access.
Okay, thanks.
There's a question there. Okay. Okay, thank you so much again.